Well, welcome to Quest Leadership Live. I'm your host, Tom Toney. I really want to thank you for joining me today. Take a quick minute, as we do every week, and just share this out with those around you that may be involved in leading, teaching, mentoring, coaching young students. That's what this live broadcast is all about. It's about helping us become better and better and stronger at coaching, specifically drawing out the greatness that's locked up inside of our students. It's good to join today. Today, we're going to talk about how to find your coaching voice. One of the things that we know as we think about those who have had an impact in our lives is that there's been a very specific quality about them that has stuck with us through the years. Now, that doesn't mean that every coach or mentor has been the same for every one of us, because they all come from varying abilities, skills, backgrounds, styles. But there are qualities that every one of them possess that are consistent, no matter who they are, how they've spoken into our lives, maybe your experience, my experience. But all of us can draw on and recognize those teachers, those mentors, those coaches that really had an impact on our lives. Why? Because I believe they found their voice. They knew who they were, and they knew how to approach engaging young students. And that's what we're going to talk about on today's broadcast here on Quest Leadership Live. So how do we find our voice? How do we discover who we are as a coach and really just kind of sit in that pocket in the way that we impact, engage, and influence the young leaders that we have the opportunity to be in front of, to be around, to help develop? I think it's an important question. I want to give you just a few tips today on how we can do this, how we can find our voice. And I'm going to share those with you. Get a pen and paper, getting ready to write these down. Some simple ways that we can kind of find our emerging voice and use that, leverage that to help influence these young lives. I think the first thing that we have to do is we have to kind of take a personal styles inventory. And there really kind of are four categories of styles that I want to kind of address here. And we tend to fall on one spectrum or the other. Sometimes there's a combination of these styles at work, but usually we find that we lean one direction or the other. For example, a question that we can ask ourselves is, are we more talk-oriented or task-oriented? Do we want to kind of talk things out, or do we want to jump in and get busy? Would we be more likely to sit and have a long conversation with the student, or would we be more likely to jump right in the big middle and say, hey, let's go get some stuff done. Let's try some things. And so typically we're going to lean toward one of those two perspectives, that we're going to be a bit more people-oriented or a bit more task-oriented. And so we want to kind of take inventory of that. And that's pretty a simple question. And I recognize off the top, well, I'm both. I like to talk things out, but I also like to get things done. But what's the tendency that you lean on? That's what you kind of want to think about when you're doing this type of an inventory. So that's an example. Here's another one that we should think about, and that is, are we more fun or more formal? Fun or formal? Do we like to be a bit more whimsical? Let's just play it out. I don't know. Let's make it up as we go along. Or are we a bit more formal in our approach? No, we've got to do it this way. Come on, everybody pay attention. Hey, guys, okay, quit joking around. Let's go. Let's get focused here. Which one of those perspectives do you tend to lean more toward, fun or formal? And then there's the aspect of, are you more creative or concise? Creative or concise. Now, creative means we're willing to bend the rules. We're willing to think outside the box, willing to come up and listen. We're willing to hear an idea that we didn't think of that may also work. We can be creative, a little bit of wiggle room. Or are we more concise? Are we more prone to say, here are the exact instructions. This is exactly the structure that things need to follow. I want to be on time. I'm expecting it done in exactly this way, and so on. More creative or more concise? Which one do you lean toward? And then finally, the fourth one that we want to really kind of want to think about is, are we more steady or more shake it up? So would we tend to, in the formal settings that we develop or we have for our students, maybe they come into a classroom setting or a training session, that type of a thing, are we more steady? It's the same every day. You can just count on, we're going to go through A, B to C to D. Or are we more shake it up? Hey, today we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to throw a curveball in there every now and then. So more steady or more shake it up. And this really comes down to asking the question, what are you more comfortable with? Are you comfortable with change, or do you like things to be status quo? So we're kind of thinking through which way we lean. Let me go back through these so you can write these down, and we can do a kind of a personality inventory. Do we lean more toward talk or task? Do we lean more toward fun or formal? Do we lean more toward creative or concise? Do we lean more towards steady or shake it up? So we can kind of think about those things. Where do we fall in those spectrums? And what we want to do is we want to immediately recognize that what we end up with, we do a little bit of an evaluation on that. What we're describing is who we are, what we're comfortable with, what we tend to lean toward, our kind of wheelhouse, so to speak. Probably, most likely, whatever, if you're being very honest in your evaluation, most likely whatever you come up with, if you went and asked some of your close friends what they thought, probably are going to match pretty closely. Now, if you find that you write these things down and you kind of think through which one of these do I lean toward, and you take that to some peers, and your peers are like, nah, I don't think I see you as the fun type than you are formal. If you get a lot of pushback on your evaluation, then it's possible that you may be projecting who you would like to be as you're doing this evaluation. So you got to be really honest with yourself and not think, well, probably people that are more concise are more desirable. So I'm going to put concise, even though really I'm more creative. No, just be honest, because what we're looking here for is not what's right or what's wrong, because there's really no right or wrong. We're not looking for right or wrong. We are looking for who you are. It's just simply who you are as a coach, mentor, teacher. Okay, once that's done and you have at least a decent grip on that, then there are a few things that you want to do to kind of help yourself develop and find your voice. The first thing we have to recognize is that not every student we lead is going to resonate with who we are naturally. In other words, there are going to be personality styles within students, and by the way, fluctuating, because one day they may be one, the next day they may be the other. Even throughout the day, they may float in and out of different styles. And so we want to be aware that not every student is automatically going to resonate with who we are. And what this means is that we have to be willing to recognize how we can develop both of each of these characteristics. So for example, if I would say of myself, I tend to like to talk things out more than I do just to drive a task, get stuff done. And I kind of like both of those, but I would say of myself, probably going to talk it out more than I am going to say, let's go do this. We might arrive at let's go do this, but it's going to be after a long conversation. So I'm going to lean more toward talkative, recognizing that there are going to be some students that I lead that aren't going to want to talk that much. They're not going to resonate as much with really talking things out. They're going to resonate more with the tactile, hands-on, let's go do something. So what I, as a coach, have to do is I have to ask myself, how can I develop a bit more of a task orientation? How can I at least build it into my repertoire in a way that's comfortable for me? And we're not looking to land at 50-50. We're not looking to be kind of just that middle of the road, all things to all people. What we're looking to do is to simply develop some skills in areas that we would not automatically describe as a strength, so we have the ability to lean back on that skill and use it when we need to. So when we engage a student that doesn't automatically resonate with who we are, we can kind of morph over here and be a bit more tasky. For example, we get a bit more formal. Maybe we're just fun and off the cuff and Some kids love that, but every now and then you get the kid that's just like, no, I need to know what's going on. I need stability. And so you say, okay, I can do that too. May not be where you spend the bulk of your time, but you know how to incorporate that perspective for the good of the student. So we ask ourselves, how can I develop both? So I want to give you some tips on how we can develop both perspectives of the talk, task, fun, formal, creative, concise, steady, shake it up. How can we develop both of those pieces? Well, one of the things that we can do is to acknowledge, first of all, acknowledge and embrace you. So acknowledge and embrace you. I've heard again and again, I've even done this myself, that people will make excuses for who they are when they think that who they are is not acceptable to the people that they're peers with. So your peers, there's a projection that my peers might not like my personality. So I'm kind of going to be a little like, well, I tend to be more fun, but I'm trying to change that because I recognize it's wrong. No, it's not wrong. It's who you are. Acknowledge it and embrace it. That doesn't mean we have to be defensive about it or think other people are off if they're not like us. It just simply means that we recognize this is who I am. This is how I'm made up. This is how I think. This is where I'm most comfortable. And so this is who I am. And there's value in that. As I said in the introduction today, there are going to be mentors, teachers, and coaches that are vastly different from person to person. One coach is not going to be like the other coach, yet we find value in the variations of those personalities, and those people still resonate with us over the years and the decades. We can look back and go, wow, they had a huge impact on who we are. So acknowledge and embrace, this is who I am. But we also don't want to stay stuck just in the who I am and become defensive and say, I'm not going to change. We also want to appreciate and value and employ those other characteristics. We want to appreciate and value. If I'm a real task driver, I've got to also find a way to appreciate those who like to talk things out. If I'm very fun and informal, I have to learn to appreciate formality and those who are formal. Because again, what everyone brings to the table is the full picture of the spectrum of what it means to be a great coach. So we want to learn how to develop those things. It begins by embracing us, but then also appreciating and valuing those other traits, especially in other people. So this brings to mind one of the things that we can do practically to develop those areas in which we might not quite be so strong, and that is to observe our peers. Find a peer that is the opposite of who you are. Here's the truth. Truth is that you may have a peer that you just simply do not connect with because they're really just different than you. The way they go about teaching, the way they go about coaching is just different than the way that you would do it. And there's a tendency for us sometimes to roll our eyes and say, well, I wouldn't do it that way, I can tell you that. But if we can pause and find the value in how they go about their coaching and teaching, we can learn some stuff from them, especially when we think about our areas of weakness. I'm not quite so strong in this, but you are. Now, I may not resonate with it. I might even be a little bit pushbacky, like, I don't know if I want to do it that way. But if we can let ourselves out of that constraint, say, I want to learn from how you do this. I see some real value in it. Then we can develop that other side of us because we have kids on our teams, in our classrooms that need us to be able to have that other skill so they can really resonate with us and we can resonate with them. The other thing that you can do is to list out the traits you feel you would benefit from developing the most. So take a look at the collective of your team of students, your class, the setting that you're in, and ask yourself, how diverse are the personalities inside my classroom? You may not have, you may find they fall in just 3 categories, 2. Maybe it's all 4 categories, but it may not be. Then you can look to say, what other characteristics can I leverage? How would they really benefit me? And then those are the things that I'm going to go after. Again, we're not looking just to become this 50-50 mix down the middle of all things. We're just looking at building up our repertoire of things we don't naturally lean toward. So the next thing I want to encourage you is to give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to focus on being stronger. Give yourself permission. I've said, I've heard others say, I've heard teachers and coaches say, it's just the way that it is. I just am who I am, and the kids just need to learn who I am. And once they learn who I am, everything's going to be a lot smoother. Once they can adjust to who I am, it's going to be a lot better. And all the responsibility is put on the student to adjust to who the coach is. And that's a lot to ask of students who are still developing their own personality styles, are still developing their own, what they lean toward. They're not there yet. It's still very liquid, very fluid for them. And so to put that off on them is a big ask. That's a tall order for a student to have to do. So I want you to give yourself permission to get stronger. What does that mean? It's going to take work. It's going to take time and effort. And if we don't give ourselves permission to grow, we'll make excuses for not doing it. Well, I don't have time. Takes too much energy. I'd rather just do it this way. It's what I'm used to. I've done it so long this way. Let's just pause. Let's give ourselves permission. You know what? I'm going to give myself some extra time on a daily basis to develop this skill. I'm going to give myself some berm, a little bit of leeway, a little bit of margin for maybe not being that great at it right now, but I've got to develop this skill. So I'm going to give myself permission to do so. Which brings me to the final thing for today, and that is this. You got to play it out. You got to put it in play. You got to try it, exercise it, experiment with that approach, that idea. Let it play out. It may not be comfortable at all. Probably won't be at first, but that's all right. What is comfortable at first when you're learning something new? Not much. But over time, as you develop it and work it, it'll become much more confident, much more comfortable. And what you're doing is becoming a stronger coach that will stand the test of time. An ability to connect with every student, to resonate with them where they are, to not have to come out of your strengths to be who you are, but to augment that ability with some of these other characteristics, some of these other strategies for connecting with students. So I hope this is helpful today. Discovering who you are, finding your voice. And that's what's going to emerge out of this process, is that your voice of influence is going to become even stronger for your students because it's going to resonate with them in a more personal and more intimate way for their own journey. So I hope this has been helpful. I encourage you to share this out, get this out to other teachers, mentors, coaches. Let's really do everything we can to engage this next generation. And above all, keep building strong young leaders.